When we want to look at our economy, we say, what does Moody's say? And Moody's is very moody when they come to Africa. Moody's. Can the Department of Economics at UNILAG not do that? Can't they? McKinsey, an American outfit, they are the ones who come here and tell us how our economy is behaving. When the American dollar as much as sneezes, the Naira goes into a coma. Why? 63 years after independence in Nigeria, 66 in Ghana, 61 in Kenya and many other countries, we still believe that somebody else's currency is what must define us. 63 years after independence, we are still importing chicken as if our chicken forgot how to lay eggs. We have and will continue to make our mistakes. Look at Africa and the decision that she has made for herself over the years. As early as 1980, Africans sitting here in Lagos, Nigeria, came up with the Lagos Plan of Action. And the Lagos Plan of Action told Africa, in order for Africa to realize our potential, we must trade amongst ourselves. But the neo-colonizer was not resting. A little earlier, 5 years earlier, the neo-colonizers had sat down in Lomé in Togo, not too far from here, and came up with an agreement of African and European and Pacific countries. And when that did not work, they sat again in Cotonou here in Benin and came up with the Cotonou Agreement. They are never resting. We must never forget that. The neo-colonialists are alive and well, and is always trying to frustrate what we do, because Africa is their hunting ground. And we did not stop there. When we are doing things, you tell me what Africa has not tried to do. In terms of the airspace, we agreed in Yamoussoukro, in La Côte d'Ivoire, that we will open our airspaces in 1988. We sat in Abuja here in Nigeria in 2001 and said we were going to spend not less than 15% of our budget in the health sector. We sat in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea in 2014 and said we were going to focus on agriculture. We sat down in Maputo in 2013 and said we were going to ensure that our women were mainstreamed in the activities of Africa. We sat down in Abuja in 2014 and said we were going to have free movement of people, and once again sat down in Kigali, Rwanda 2018 and said we were going to eliminate visas. We sat down in Abuja and said that we were going to silence the guns in 2013. We did not. And we sat down in 2020 and said we were going to silence them. And now the guns are alive and well. And who are supplying us with the weapons? It is not us. It is others. Should we blame them? Yes, we should. Should we blame ourselves? Yes, we should. So Africa has always been a battleground. And the rhetoric that we see and the manner in which we ourselves are educated. My sister talked about education. But really, what are we teaching ourselves? It is fella Nicola Pokuti said, "Teacher, don't teach me nonsense." And I'm suggesting to us that most of us, including most of us who are here, we are so very thoroughly miseducated that what we must do is to unlearn the burden that we have in our mind. Those of us who are lawyers, when do we feel happiest? When we cite an English authority to determine a land case in Abeokuta. When we talk about the reasonable man, we don't talk about the reasonable man in a keke, in a papa. We talk about the reasonable man being the man in the Clapham omnibus in London, England. That is how miseducated we are. And until we are re-educated, we who are present here are part of the danger to Africa. Because even in our unguarded moments, I went several years ago to the university at Harvard and talking to students, and one of them said that Harvard was the best school in law, in teaching of law. I said, whose law? Nigerian law? Ugandan law? Zimbabwean law? They can only be best in teaching their law, not ours. And I've seen we who are in this space of education, somebody spends 6 years at Unilag, and when they go to Harvard or Stanford for 3 weeks for a short course where they spend most of the time taking tea, he comes back and says, an alumni of Harvard. So the time is now. The time is now to begin re-educating ourselves. The time is now to exercise the ghost of low self-esteem. You know, Africa has many things. We have talked about our mineral resources. We've talked about our arable land. We have talked about many things, but from where I sit, the greatest African resource is the human resource. You know, Africa has been so wronged by other civilizations. We were the enablers of the first industrial revolution. When our ancestors were taken to work in the farms in Europe, we enabled that revolution. Right now, we are enabling the fourth industrial revolution and the fifth industrial revolution. That is why they have talent visas, because they are taking our talent. If it is not nurses, it is our IT gurus. If it is not our IT gurus, it is our engineers. And we are gleefully letting them away. I see our heads of state saying, we have signed a contract to take our workers to Saudi Arabia, modern day slavery. And you know, just this morning, my wife sent me a proverb from Turkey that when you elect a clown and you think that he will be a king, what he does is to convert the kingdom into a circus. And I am suggesting to us that that is part of the African problem, because it starts with political hygiene. Most of Africa is suffering because we do not have democracies. We have kakistocracies. And kakistocracies are governments by our very worst. This is what we must deal with, and this is what we must say. Who do we elect into our public offices? Because, as I've said before, when you allow hyenas to take care of goats, why should you be surprised when the goats are eaten? This is the same. And Africa is only going to realize our potential in all areas when, by dint of choice, we enable and allow our best men and women to serve in different areas. I've heard it being said about Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. I've heard it being suggested about Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia. I've heard it being said about Japan. I've heard it being said about other countries. But there was a conscious decision on the part of those individuals and the followership. We always talk about leaders, but we never talk about the followers. The followers must also style up. Africans on average are for some reason attracted to thieves. Africans are for some reason attracted to men and women who cannot serve her. And when they are not served, then they complain. When Africans are told, choose you now whom we shall release, Jesus of Nazareth or Barabbas, they say, release Barabbas. And when Barabbas behaves like Barabbas, they say, why are you not behaving like Christ? It cannot be done. And this is what we must do. And I am submitting to us that it can be done and it should be done. I know a number of African countries, and I travel this continent sufficiently to know that there are African countries that are doing well. They are trying. There is no nation without trials and tribulation. We are fond of talking about the United States of America as an exemplar of that which is good and bad. When they said in 1776 that they held certain truths to be self-evident, that all men were born equal, that they were endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among those who were life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, were blacks included? No, they were not. Did they not fight a civil war? Yes, they did. Are they not frustrating people until 1963? Did George Floyd, was he not killed only recently? There is not a single nation without trials and tribulation. And we must therefore remind ourselves that we have the wherewithal to catapult Africa into a different orbit. And Nyerere of Tanzania once said, we must also define what development means. And he said, development does not mean necessarily the building of skyscrapers. There is nothing wrong with that. But let the Americans go to the moon, we are going to provide water to our villages. We must define what development means. And once we define what development means, and we define ourselves, then Africa shall realize our potential. In 1996, Thabo Mbeki talked about an African. Who is an African? Who are you? Define yourself first. The Chinese define themselves. The Indonesians define themselves. The Koreans define themselves. We must define ourselves and begin to believe in our institutions. You know, and I see it in this part of the world. When we want to look at our economy, we say, what does Moody's say? And Moody's is very moody when they come to Africa. Moody's. Can the Department of Economics at UNILAG not do that? Can't they? McKinsey, an American outfit, they are the ones who come here and tell us how our economy is behaving. When the American dollar as much as sneezes, the Naira goes into a coma. Why? 63 years after independence in Nigeria, 66 in Ghana, 61 in Kenya, and many other countries, we still believe that somebody else's currency is what must define us. 63 years after independence, we are still importing chicken as if our chicken forgot how to lay eggs. The time is now for Africa to ask fundamental questions. Because if you ask the wrong questions, you'll get the wrong answers. And I'm suggesting to us that Africa is already asking those questions.